Thank you so much. These are always interesting moments. Those of you who are designers in the audience, you know this. You spend most of your time kind of at your desk or in the studio. And so thank you for that gracious. Sometimes I hear all this and I think, who is that amazing person? I would like to meet them sometime. I want to thank the Dallas Architecture Forum as well for inviting me here today. I have a clicker. Great. So I am a landscape architect, an urban designer, and I have a mid-sized firm in Boston. We're about 40 people, and I think that we come to landscape architecture in a unique way, and we've been doing this for about 20 years, really just understanding resiliency and really focusing on both the ecological side, but also the humanistic side. So really trying to understand how does the brain function, what are the neurological kind of synaptic connections that allow for us to understand how we connect with the landscape. And I think it's very important for us to understand it from both angles. And we're very fortunate. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the healing gardens that we've done back when wellness wasn't like a section in the newspaper. And so I think what's amazing about landscape architecture is the tools that we have are the tools for wellness. We do know that in the cities that we're working in these days, that there's this pressing need of kind of resiliency measures by landscape architects. And so I wanted to talk about that today in terms of the projects that we're doing. But I want to take a moment, because we tend to talk about these things in terms of science. But the other wonderful thing about landscape, and you all know this by all of the landscapes we walk through, is that it's not just about the kind of the design moves that we make and the formalistic kind of transformations we make, but it is, I use this as an example because I was a pianist until I was about 24, and I had developed tendonitis in my left arm, so I had to kind of shift gears. Well, first I had a kind of meltdown, and then I had to shift gears. But the thing about landscape is it's multisensory. It is that kind of, you can close your eyes and still experience the landscape, very much like how in music you do that. And sound is this amazing thing. It's basically just these kind of molecules bumping against each other until it goes into your cochlea and into your brain. And really, you know, when you play music, this is the part of the brain you're trying to get to. It's the amygdala. It is the thing, when you listen to your favorite piece of music, for me it's Bill Evans, and it kind of brings tears to your eyes or makes you kind of re-see something. Your amygdala is the thing that changes that sound in your brain and makes it emotional. And so in our work, we're also trying to reach the amygdala. We're not just trying to make something that's healthful, that's resilient, but we also want to bring a sense of wonder to the place. And so I wanted to kind of talk about all three things today. So about 18 years ago, we did our first healing garden in a hospital. And since then, we've done 14 healing gardens. We're working on New York Presbyterian with Studio Game right now. But it is some of the most rewarding work that I do, that our team does. And it is utilizing the materials of landscape to really bring about. So there's a lot of psychological research out there which now shows that within 3 to 5 minutes, when you put landscape within the hospital, there's a whole set of normalizations that happen to the bodily functions, to the brain function, to blood pressure. And so every hospital that we work on now talks about bringing 4 or 5 gardens, which is a sea change from many years ago. We are all grateful that we're able to join here together in person. From 2020 to 2022, the Pew Research Foundation has done a continual public health analysis. And what they have found is there's been a spike in kind of what they call high intensity psychological stress. So I won't go through these statistics because you can read them, but more than half of young adults today, that's between 18 and 29, have experienced at least once a year over the last 2 years what they call high intensity psychological stress. And we're bordering on a moment where we're saying this is a mental health crisis. So this is something that's very important to us when we design public space. We try to think about all these folks and the role that landscape can play, not just in hospitals, but in the public realm, in kind of bringing that stress level down. We also know that our cities are on fire and they are also flooding. So every city that we work in, that is one of the first questions. There are two big issues. One has to do with the community that we serve, and the second one has to do with the kind of storm water, every raindrop that comes down. What is the pressure that's being placed? So this is a project that I'm going to talk about today. It's the Seoul River, the Chunghae River, and every summer, more and more, they have to design for a 300, 400, 500-year storm. What we try to do with all that water is not just kind of hide underground and let it get released slowly, but to celebrate it and to find ways to daylight that water and to make it something that becomes a public amenity. Because water is amazing. It is the kind of amenity and material in the landscape that when we open a project and people can hear and see water, we see them kind of running towards it. The only other thing that we have in our toolkit that does that is light at night, you know, when we do things like that. But this is the Seoul River, this is a project in Houston I'll talk about today. Again, kind of daylighting the stormwater, also creating an amenity. And then creating kind of freshwater wetlands that are discovery zones in these public parks. So when we talk about human health and mental health and well-being, we categorize it. For us in our studio, we have a toolkit, and we think about it in terms of 5 criteria. Today I'm only going to talk about 4 of them, which is play, seeking, care, and grief. And these are all really important components when we're thinking about the role that landscape plays in creating community and bringing about healthfulness. And so you can see all of the folks that we consider as we're designing these spaces, because we design for the public. And I think architects in some ways have it a lot easier because they're designing for often a single constituency. Whereas when we design a public park, a 14-acre park, we have to think about a lot of different people, a lot of different families, a lot of different age groups who will be coming there. So play is not just something that's ornamental, but it is the lifeline. There's some autism research that they've done with rats. When they separate them out and they don't let them play, they die. And so from that, what scientists and psychologists have learned is that with children and with adults and with seniors, that it's very important for us to engage each other and to play, to seek, to discover. This is another component that's really important. And so when we design, we kind of create these categories and then to try to understand how the landscape becomes a platform and a healing device for these different considerations. And then the last one is care. I'd say before the pandemic, our, our, our focus on care and on wellness was really within hospitals. Within a year of the start of the pandemic, every project, so we're working at MIT, we're working in Detroit with the Ford Motor Company, we're working on the waterfront at Bal Harbor. Every single client has called us up and said, wait, we want to start to think about wellness in our project. And so that notion of discovery is something that started with our healthcare projects, and I want to talk about two. One is in Chicago. This is the Crown Sky Garden, and it was we started it, I think, about 15 years ago. It was right at the beginning when we would have these debates, or the client would have debates. Should we be spending $25 million on a garden within the hospital, because this is a vertical hospital, or could we buy 3 MRI machines and place that in this space instead? And because that research had come out, we started to say, well, I think that we should put a garden in. It was a long, like 6 months of conversations. Whenever we do these projects, we do sketches. We work by hand, but we also kind of work three-dimensionally. And this project, because it was all inside, there were all these parameters about working inside, and we wanted to keep everyone safe, all the patients. So there were very strict parameters of what kind of materials we could use and the kind of abstraction. So this is a resin material that is nested, and it's custom-built resin material. So it's a series of these kind of layered resin materials. And you can see in the background there is this kind of, it's a glycerin fountain that you probably have seen in your hospitals. And what we did was we filled them with marbles with the kids. And when the glycerin kind of comes up, it actually creates the sound of the seashore that we have in Massachusetts in the North Shore, of like these small pebbles sort of moving back and forth. And so the work is really about creating a series of these garden nooks within this larger area. And then embedded within these walls are a series of different kinds of interactive light play elements for the patients and their families. So let me just go back. So there's a series, there's probably 12 of these logs. And I wanted to take a moment just to talk about this project because for us, we're always looking for a kind of cultural resonance in the project itself that emerges out of the city that we're working with. This is in Chicago, and we had finished construction documents at this point. And we got a call from the urban forester we were working with there, who said there was a storm last night and 3 trees planted by Frederick Law Olmsted during the Columbian Exposition just fell. Would you like them? It was 11 o'clock at night, so I was like, hello? Who is this? And these are them. And this is me really excited. And what they did was they sliced these into 3-inch slabs, kiln dried them over 2 years. And we thought, you know, wouldn't it be great if kids could, like, we could cast kids' hands and kind of embed them in the wood and have these hands be these elements that other kids put their hands on. And then it's an interactive element. So we set aside 2 days in Chicago in their old hospital to say, you know, want your kids' hands in the new garden? And we expected maybe 20 kids or something like that. And when I got there in the morning, there was a line out the door. And so these kids, they're watching SpongeBob SquarePants. We do a lot of interactive sound pieces, and this is one of them. So when you put your hands on someone else's hands, you get the sounds of water. But we thought it'd be fun if they were cultural sounds of water. So it's like slurping of water and things like that. So when we work in these pediatric hospitals, it's so much fun because there's a way in which kids play that no one else does. The other thing about this garden that I just want to highlight is this area here was rotted out. That's why the tree fell. It had come to the end of its life. And we got a call from the woodworker saying I could kind of take a piece of wood and perfectly, you probably have done this in your home, and perfectly inlay it in here, and no one will even know that it was there. And I thought, that doesn't sound right. Like, something doesn't sound right. And so I thought, like, let me call you back. And about 24 hours later, I realized what was wrong with it is that is not what healing is. Healing, you often have a kind of a remnant, a scar after you have surgery or something like that. So we spent a bit of time and found this resin in Europe that was an amber color that allowed for us to just retain this. And then the fabricator actually took some dead bugs and put them in these wood elements. And we love collaborating with fabricators like that. So there's a hide and seek quality to this. So this is from the Prentice Women's Hospital looking back onto the garden. The garden is a kind of iconic element that you can see. And so you can see all these kind of gradating colors. There's a whole color theory that we did that I won't go into today. But this is the Lurie Children's Hospital. Second hospital that we've just completed is at Boston Children's. And so that was, the Crown Sky Garden was one of our first hospitals. This is one of our more recent hospitals, and we did 8 gardens for them. So they really ran with the idea of 3 to 5 minutes. It's part of the kind of healing toolkit. And so you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's one interior one, and one sibling garden in the basement, not in the basement, at the lower level, which has a basketball court. And so at their entrance, this is sort of the merging of, in every project I'm going to talk about today, I'm picking one piece that's a little bit more detailed. And in this one, I wanted to show an entry wall detail that we designed. And this utilizes a technology that they utilize now for tombstones. So we knew that it would have longevity. And these are all hand-painted slabs of granite that are a kind of Where's Waldo of local flora and fauna. And this is the entry wall. It goes about 400 feet. And there's a series, there are 8 different gardens. Each one serves a different purpose. It serves a different constituency. And so this is a paradigm shifting project because each garden serves like different kinds of patients. It provides play areas for siblings. We call this the root garden. It has a lot of interior gardens. It has 3 interior gardens. And this bench and the walls around it are actually a dawn redwood, which was taken down during the construction, and we saved it and did the same thing. Okay, so those are the healing gardens. I wanted to go to the other end of the spectrum to show how that those healing gardens and the idea of wellness has kind of entered into all of the work that we've done that has kind of bigger urban impact. So this is downtown Seoul. It's about 2.5 million people, so it makes it 8 times denser than New York City. If you've ever been to any of these East Asian mega cities, it's incredible, and they have immense flooding problems. And so we won a competition to develop what is called the Cheonggye River. It is a 7-mile river corridor that starts in the heart of the city, and it's a historic river. And it was, this is the Cheonggye River, this is the Han River, and everything kind of feeds into that. I like showing this picture just because, look at North Korea. This is a night shot. Isn't that incredible? This is at night. So when you fly over Korea, although no longer can you fly over North Korea, they don't allow it. And so just, this is the Cheonggye River as it feeds into the Han River. And part of the project was not just bringing that river, historic river back, but reconnecting the city. So all these yellow kind of cross lines are these historic bridges that were put back into place. And so this is a picture of, for hundreds of years, urban effluence was flowing directly into this river. And during the Korean War, it became really contaminated. And so what they did was they covered it with a highway. And so this was the 7 miles of highway. And this is the kind of the process of it transforming from a highway back to that historic river. So I think this is a video. And so this just gives you a sense of the scale. We realigned the highway and also created this greenway all the way for 7 miles through this city. And it really transformed the city. So imagine this was a highway, both at grade and elevated. And it was a kind of realignment of the roadways, as well as uncovering this piece of history. It is the reason why the generals who kind of came to Seoul, South Korea, they decided to place Seoul where it was because there was this natural amenity. There's a lot of bragging rights for this project, and every year it gets outdated. So I think these numbers are outdated, but it addresses kind of urban heat island effect. It introduces like 250 new species of aquatic species. It really reduces air pollution. Anyone who's been to Hong Kong, Seoul, Tokyo, you know that that's a big issue there, and really restored the water quality of the stream back to a class 2 level. So there's but nobody really cares, right? This is what the project is about, is bringing people back to the water and doing it safely. The other piece of history to this is that there are 9 source points to this source point park, and each one is a cleft in the stone. So there's, you will see these clefts in the stone, and the stone is quarried from the 9 provinces of North and South Korea. That was done during the Sunshine Policy, when North and South Korea actually kind of marched together in the Olympics together. This project would not be possible today, but it has a kind of political, we're always looking for ways in which the project and the materiality has meaning to the community, and that we bring them into the process of making the project. So it was a donation from each of the provinces. These are the historic bridges that were reconstructed or restored. And so you can see that the river is 3 to 5 meters below the street level. And the reason why is because of this. And so this is one kind of resiliency. I'm going to show you a couple different ways we do urban resiliency. But this is one where, just look at the stair. And this is flash flooding. So this all happens within a matter of 3 to 6 hours. It's very dangerous. And what this does is, on an average day, the Cheonggye River takes in 285,000 tons of superficial runoff every day. But during a monsoon, it's like a bathtub. It just fills up. So I think I have a picture afterwards. Oh, I have a video. And so it's not just a place of resiliency, but it is a place of cultural celebration. They use the river as a place during the holidays, for special events. And then what I consider a successful project is one where I can go on Instagram and I don't need to hire a photographer. So these are 2 kids boogie boarding, which I love. I think it's awesome. It becomes an urban beach. Their summers are like Dallas, quite hot and muggy. And this is, you may have read this in the paper, the seawall drownings. There were, I've forgotten how many school children were on this boat, and they were on a class trip and they drowned. And it was a huge national tragedy because it was children. And what happened was that just spontaneously, people in Seoul started taking yellow ribbons and lining them all along the Cheonggye River. So foundationally, those railings all along the Cheonggye River that separate the upper and lower levels became this place of mourning. So it's those criteria that I talked about earlier. Some of it that we don't know. We don't know how people are going to use these spaces. And then this is, the Cheonggye River is here. This is, you may have also read about this when the previous president was getting advice from shamans and things like that, and people got pretty upset. Like, what happened to your advisors? And people kind of took to the streets, and this is what public space does. It gives voice. It creates a platform for the public voice. This is in Chicago, a different kind of resiliency, and it is at the Chicago Botanic Garden. And so Chicago Botanic Garden is located here. It's right along the Skokie River, and they experience a lot of flash flooding. So our garden is located here, and we designed this. You can see that this whole area is flooded. And this is, again, within 3 to 4 hours, it just inundates the garden and then slowly gets released. Ideally, slowly gets released. So this is that space that was flooded in the previous photo. And so it was an act of trying to manage balance, cut, and fill to save money in the budget. We created these sculptural landforms that also act as a kind of detention basin. And so the sculptural landforms are also places for play. And we also created these we took the logs that were on site and we created these play structures, nature play structures. It's a whole other lecture, but I think the idea of buying playground equipment from a catalog is criminal. And we laugh, but I think it's absolutely true. The brain grows till you're about age 29. That's depressing, right, for all of us over 29? But there is so much learning that happens on the playground. And when we take that away and create these kind of closed circuits, I think there's going to be a whole series of studies that are going to come out from all of us who grew up on the same playground. I didn't grow up on them. I'm older than that. But there's this idea that the playground in Dallas is the same playground as in Boston, which is horrific to think about, right? That we're teaching our children, or we're not teaching them things. But that's a whole other lecture. And then, what it means to be resilient. And this is a stream that we integrated that takes out of the Skokie River and kind of circulates back in. So it's a mini Cheonggye River, but it's a way of kind of water is this amazing thing that people engage. There's a piece of this project that we learned from, which is this idea that not only do you go to a place, like when you go to a beach, it's not just the experience of being at that beach and that waterfront, but it is that sand that's left in your shoes when you come home, that thing you bring home with you. And so this is something we talked at length about with the client group. So we picked a lot of plant material where kids can actually pick up like a seed from a money plant, and just slide it into their pocket, bring it home, and kind of put it on their nightstand and have a kind of remembrance. And that's almost as powerful. That's like a whisper, but it's as powerful as kind of visiting the space itself. There's a way in which all of the botanic gardens, we're designing another one in Charlottesville right now, that talk about that it's a place for a community. And that's a really change for this garden, for the Chicago Botanic Garden. It's free, it's outside the bounds of the gate, and it is a place where everyone can discover the natural world. And adults have fun too. I'm going to talk about a project that's on the boards right now. We've been working on it for about 3 years. It's with the Ford Motor Company in Detroit and Michigan Central. It's a 14.5-acre park that we're designing for them. And so some of you may know this historic train station. This is, and then here, and then there's the Albert Kahn, I believe this is the Albert Kahn building. Yeah, this is the Albert Kahn building next door. So you can see these train tracks that go all the way through. And when we started doing community engagement with the Mexican town is right here, Corktown is here. A lot of folks from Mexican town told us that this was the portal by which their grandfather or great-grandfather or grandmother came into America. And so those are the stories. I mean, landscape is about stories. But today I'm going to focus on resiliency. So this is our site, right? So you can see, you know, everywhere. Water is everywhere and seeping in everywhere. And so what we, you know, again, we are interested in creating a project that has a lot of bragging rights. So it is a project that is completely self-sustaining, utilizes clean energy like solar and wind turbines to fuel the entire project. It's got over 600 trees with 800 different, 800 diverse plant material. It daylights about 35,000 square feet of storm water and does things like with technology. So this is supposed to be a technological center. And when we first started the project, we thought maybe this is a place where there'll be like drones flying everywhere, and it's like the Jetsons and stuff. And what we found is that as technology advances, it's becoming smaller and smaller. And it's actually, in this project, it's allowing for us to get closer to the natural world. The lighting is responsive. Most lighting in parks and in the public realm are an on-off switch. And there's technology out there that exists today that allows for it to be responsive when people are coming into the space. It kind of rises up. There's also smart traffic that also reduces. So all of these things that we're doing, and I'm not going to read through it, have an interface with wellness. So asthma rates, obesity rates, sleep disorder, blood pressure, all of these measures that we're taking in the design itself also help us with health and wellness. So this is the project. Here is, so we're looking at it from the other side. Roosevelt Park is over here. And every time I show this project, people say, wait a second, is this the front door? And really, everyone always thinks about that as the front door, but we're trying to flip it and make the south side the front door. So this is the park located here. This is the Albert Kahn building that's open now, and it's a tech center where there's a lot of innovative young folks there who are developing the design. And so as we zoom in, there's a way in which you'll see this kind of lineage of the tracks that the whole design is kind of inspired by. And so let me just go back. So this is the gateway to the project, and we're daylighting all of the stormwater there. So this is the front entry with the kind of daylighted stormwater elements within that. And you walk across the water to get to the train station itself. The material resonance in this project is the history of the project itself. 2 years ago, we spent a week there, basically like junkyard collectors. Like, don't throw that away. So there's all this stuff that we saved, plus the tracks, plus the columns, the top of these colonnades that were slowly kind of eroding and rotting out, that they were rebuilding. And those are going to be part of the project. These are those lines in plan. So the South Station is here, that are the historic rail locations that guide the whole project. And so you can see, like, this is the central plaza, this is the center of the project, and you can see that there are these fountains that kind of align with those guidelines that I just showed you. And so it's a performance space, that central space. And so inspired by a lot of the history, so here is the train station, here, and then there are these canopy structures that are very heavy. And this is where all the trains stopped underneath. And so we've started developing these glue lamp structures that actually are the same geometry. And it works quite nicely because the columns come down. So they're inspired by, but not a kind of replica, come down right at the grid line of the historic structure itself. So I guess one thing that differentiates us from maybe other landscape architects is that we're situated at the kind of at the overlap between architecture and landscape. We think that it's important for all of us, for architects to design landscape, and for us to design the architecture. And so we've been working very closely with our team to kind of develop this structure. And this is basically covered with solar panels at the top. And all the solar panels bring energy down to the bottom, so that from the Boys and Girls Club that have kind of tech classes to folks who are in the book building, the Albert Kahn building, we're hoping that they'll come out here and actually work and collaborate and engage each other. In this tech plaza, we also have another typology of exterior art and technology opportunities. So this is a media cube that we are designing, where artists will come in monthly, quarterly, and start to integrate within this kind of media box their own vision. And we think that this is going to be a real kind of destination for this project. And then on the other side of the project, we have a series of these gardens with these playground areas. And I'll just show you one of the playground areas, which is this one. So you can see we're reusing the columns and a lot of the relics of stone to create these play structures. And so this is just this is the resiliency gateway. These are those plug and play canopy, the glue lamp structure. This is the location of that media cube. That central plaza is located here, and then the gardens are located here. And it's all kind of tied together with that kind of linearity of the tracks themselves. Last project. Oh, no, not last project. Second to last project. This is in Houston. This is the TMC Helix Park. We just finished this last fall. And flash floods are the problem in Houston. You know, it shows up on the front page of the Boston Globe many times. You know that it's serious. So you can see just the severe flash flooding since 2015. almost every year there have been these major storm events. And so it's in some ways coming full circle back to the Soul River project, in that we wanted to create a resiliency project, but it's also located within the Texas Medical Center, which is the largest medical complex in the country. Some people say across the globe. And so part of the project was to lift up the site about 5 feet and to create what we're calling this kind of 5-foot sponge. And it holds about 3.2 million gallons of stormwater within it and slowly releases it. It's a rare condition of a win-win within this sponge, which is like in section, something like this. So this is the Braze Bayou, and it was a parking lot before, and so this is what it did before when there was a storm. It just flooded the entire site. What we've done is by lifting up the site, we've also kind of slowed down this kind of passage of the storm. So our site is located here, and we've built 14 acres here. I'm sorry, 14 acres here. And it is a public park given back to the community. You can see it's got a lot of stuff going on in it. There's a lot of mobility. There's a lot of energy harvesting. Daylighting stormwater was a big piece of the project. And so that's what I want to focus on today. So how do you take something that's kind of a natural disaster, store it somewhere, and then transform it and daylight it and make it something wonderful? And that's kind of what all these projects try to do in different ways. Whenever we're working on these kind of complex projects, we think about plant material, not just as kind of individual trees, but thinking about the kind of ecoregions that we can start to integrate. And so because we had a series of these parks that kind of interlinked with each other, we were able to integrate kind of 4 different typologies of ecoregions that were native to this area. And so there's 650 new trees here. And so this is the piney forest. And so you can see there's this stream located here that turns into kind of a natural freshwater detention basin. And this is the park. You can see here, it's very hot in Houston, as you know. I don't have to explain to you guys. And last year when we were planting in the fall, in September, it was like 110 degrees 7 days in a row. And they didn't get rainfall for like, I think 80 days or something. It was crazy. And so, but this is basically upcycled stormwater that's detained and then cleansed and then daylighted. And so this is a detail of the basin of that stormwater. So this is that detail. This is how do you create that agitation of water, and it's 3 different colors of granite that are kind of stacked at different heights to create that kind of agitation. And so that canopy structure, when I said it's hot in Houston, it's like, no, duh, you guys, to me, like, the underside of it is reflective. So this is underneath that canopy. And I love doing projects where they're hard to explain but easy to understand when you go to it. So you'll all have to go to Houston. Did you just hear me? I just took on a southern dialect. Y'all. So underneath this is another stream. And so when you walk underneath there, you have lunch, you kind of see the reflection of the water moving through. And we try to just create, like we do in our healing gardens, a diversity of experiences that are tied together with water. Discovery and an understanding of what our place I do feel like playgrounds at their best teach us all about our place in the natural world and how to be more respectful. This is a little homage to the kind of summers in Houston. So you can see there's an upper path and a lower path. And so this is just zooming in a little bit further. So you can see there's a kind of waterfall behind these benches. And then just this really cooling, it's a very cool effect. You lie down here and you hear the sound of the water, and it is about 10 degrees cooler in this space. And we, utilize landforms, and this is the oak kind of grove. Okay, so that was the last slide of that. And I have added one final project, if you'll bear with me, which is just a little eye candy. Because it was on the poster, so I added it at the last minute. So this is a garden we did in Lincoln, and it has, well, actually, it does have a lot to do. It is a very resilient and a very sustainable garden. There is no lawn here, 0 lawn. So this is 16 acres, and so I will say it again, no lawn. And this is this kind of enclosure that we designed along with the entire landscape. And everything is pervious on site, even their front entry point. And so they had 2 German shepherds. And so this dimension from here to here is the width of the shoulder to shoulder dimension of their German shepherd. Let's go. So it's interesting being a landscape architect. You do lots of different things. Like I come here one day, the next day I'm measuring the dog shoulder to shoulder. But you can see that the fence itself has a kind of depth to it. It's all solid Corten. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is my homage to Bach. It's another lecture, but I won't talk about it today. And this is their lawn. It's steppables with these kind of reinforcement. And so, and then this is, this is from their kitchen in winter. And this is my last slide. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. The question was the resonances of history and culture and how we learn about it and how we bring it into our work. Is that a good paraphrasing? Did I miss something?
Memory triggers emotions.
How memory triggers the emotions, yeah. So one thing we learned in our so we have a research group within our office that focuses on neurodiversity and the neurological functionings. Because when they call it the brain center in a building or something, the brain center is literally the brain center of your body. Like everything you feel in your body, every movement you make is coming from up here. And what we read like regularly dense white papers about scientists who are doing really important neurological research, primarily with rats. But sometimes they do it with humans. And one thing that we learned was that that history is a really important part of wellness. And then what they found through their study is that when you go to a park, for example, like the one in Detroit, and you see pieces of history within that park, like that we didn't obliterate all of the tracks and we didn't obliterate all that history, and there's a resonance of that history, even for young folks, it lowers their blood pressure, it normalizes electrical synaptic connections in the brain. It's an amazing thing that we all need to feel connected to something larger than ourselves. So that's something that we learned through our neurological studies. We thought, boy, that's interesting. Because, there are all these things that you think about, you think, oh, it's nice to have. It's nice to have a little history in the project. But it's better for our health when we put it in there. I always use it as a kind of platform to get to know a community. So America's an amazing place. I was born and raised in Connecticut, and I didn't leave New England until I really far afield, till I became a landscape architect. And what I learned is that everywhere I go, it's so different. I mean, it's so different, right? I go to Miami one day, I go to Seattle the next day, I go to New York the next day, I come here, and it's lovely, you know. But part of my job and our job collectively as an office, as a studio, is to really get to know folks. And we do that through that process of talking to people, getting to know the site. And there isn't a formula. It has to come organically. It's like those trees that fell during the Columbian Exposition. We didn't know that was coming. And so I now have learned to have faith that it will come, that something will show up. As long as we talk to a lot of people and we say, we're looking for you to tell us something, show us something interesting. And sometimes the community doesn't always know that it's interesting. We're outsiders, so we can say, oh, save that. That's interesting. So I think it's like, it comes again, it's like upcycling materials is always good to do. We try to really reduce the amount of stone that we quarry, and we, you know, but it's also about that resonance of meaning that I think is really important in the work that we do. So the question was about transportation and the projects that we do, especially the urban projects. Transportation is the bones of our work. And we always want to be a part of that discussion. We don't want to come in after that discussion is done. So like in the Soul River, you could see the highway was over the river. And so that notion, I mean, we were part of a very complex team figuring out how high, where does it go, who goes on it. And in Seoul, they decided they were going to narrow the road. It was very forward thinking. In Detroit, the transportation piece is so important because I could do an hour lecture just on that project. That's why it's a little piecemeal when I presented it. But it's the conception of that project is how do you rebuild a part of a city thinking forward to a time when we don't have gas-powered vehicles. So so there's all these discussions we're having and all these kind of mobility charging stations, but also like, I have a headache. I need to go to Walgreens. I go on my phone. And there are people in the Albert Kahn building who are working with us on this. And I tell them what I want. It gets brought over by drone and then put into the special box that automatically opens up. Then I just walk out and get it. You save energy. You don't need gas-powered vehicles to get there. So there's a new way in which you're engaging the city in this space that's really different. And so transportation is the foundation of what we do. It's the other thing interesting in Detroit that we're talking about is ways in which technology can, what they call smart traffic, right? So at traffic stops, there are all these different ways in which our cars will eventually talk to the traffic lights and also save energy as well. And so we're always uncovering new ways in which how we move through the city. I mean, in Boston now, the way people move through the city is so different today than it was even 5 years ago. There's probably 200 different ways people move through the city really fast, you know, like they have skateboards, they have scooters that are electrified, they have bikes, they have, you know, and I think that's the future of the city, is to think less about cars and more about, you know, how do cars drop off, let EVs drop off and leave somebody behind and come back and pick them up. So I think it's a very important part of the discussion that we have with traffic engineers who are the experts at this, but we want to make sure that spatial considerations are part of that discussion. Okay, I don't know how to rephrase that question. I should give you a mic. I think what you're saying is designing the urban landscape is complex. And so what is that process of taking all of that information as well as that community engagement, which is thousands of voices. It's not, we're doing a museum right now. It's a very complex effort. And I think our job is to use all the tools that we have in design. So we make models by hand. We still do that. We still draw by hand, but we also use Rhino, Grasshopper, and other kinds of technologies concurrently to understand how we can kind of rebuild parts of the city. And it's a great communication tool because lots of other consultants that we work with use that, and then they kind of, we kind of converse through the technology itself in that process. I think that our job as designers is to simplify. So it's to take lots of information and try to simplify it into something that's really understandable. So I always think about it like being a designer is like trying to create a great work of art. A great work of art is both personal and also universal. It touches lots of people and it touches them differently. And I think that's the goal. We just finished a master plan for Wellesley College. It's a 37-acre master plan. And we spent a year doing community engagement with them. And that was a complex project. There's stormwater and all this stuff. And we had this conversation. And these community engagement sessions, sometimes they're very polite, right? People put like stickers on a board and everyone's like, how do you do? And we kind of wanted to break that down. So finally we did this special, I won't go into how it was, and it was okay. And at the end, I kind of said, does anyone have any last comments? We had brought together alumni, students, faculty, administrators, people from the town. And one woman raised her hand and she said, I just want to talk about, I'm a freshman, and I just want to talk about, I just walked through campus and this hawk just came down and killed this mouse right in front of me. And I thought, all right, so let's have a good night. Like, what? And it just broke open the whole audience. Everyone just started like talking about their wildlife killing experience. And it just, there was like a hum in the group. And that's what we're looking for. And from that, in the last hour, emerged the notion of the wander. So it simplified all these different stories. So Wellesley College, if you've never been there, if you visit New England, you should go there. It's got some of the best architecture in Boston. Is the opposite of Harvard University. You walk on the campus, the paths never connect door to door directly, and it's an uncovering experience. And it has to do with the kind of natural Cayman kettle landscape of that landscape. But that's the magic, right? The wander. Everyone can agree on it. It kind of covers a lot of topics, and it gives a character and identity to the overall kind of vision. And so how you get there, it's just like dating or something. It's just like you just have to have hope that you're going to make a connection. And if this doesn't work, you come in for the, you try and you bring in clowns and you try to like break it open, and that's what you try to do. And you're trying to get people to talk to each other and invest in the project. That's the goal ultimately. But it's trying to bring everything to a simple point of view that reflects the future community that's that's going to use it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.